Well, thank you for being here this morning, and I have a special thanks for Barbara for being here with me this morning. And does anyone not have a handout, by the way? If you take a look at that first page, you'll see what we're going to cover this morning, and that is, in just a minute, give you a little time at your, excuse me, at your table to talk about what are some of the challenges for you, or maybe a friend of yours if you don't have any challenges in any of these areas. And then we're going to give you some background on ourselves and tell you about the crisis that we went through. And then we're going to talk about three. We've learned a lot of things, particularly me the hard way, but we've learned a lot of things over our 50 years of marriage. But three of them that really had a significant impact that we use to this day. And I know some of you are probably not married and some of you may not be working, but we believe that the concepts that we're going to share will help you wherever you are in life. And then there'll be a time for questions and answers. Now, I have to tell you, Barb and I met in 1958. And we were attracted to one another because we were different. She was spontaneous and fun-loving, and I was structured and more serious.
Can you imagine?
And so we were attracted by that. And once we got married, over time, we realized that those became irritants. I don't know if you've ever experienced that. But over more time, we've learned to adjust and work through those and recognize that we really complemented one another and they could be a strength. However, one of the areas that we continually struggle with is what we're doing here today. And that's because when we go into a training situation, she becomes structured and I like spontaneity. And so what we've had to do, and it took me a long time, I'm a slow learner, it took me a long time to learn this, because this is our structure. I don't typically script things. And that seems to work well, except every once in a while Barb likes to go off script. And when she does, because she knows what she's supposed to say, and then I follow that. So it throws me off.
And I love that look. So watch it if we have an opportunity.
So it's kind of the deer in the headlights. And then the other thing is, one area we're the same in is we're both morning people. But how we define that is quite different.
For Skip, being a morning person he likes to get up really early and he's out the door. He was here at Monto's. We pulled into the parking lot at 5:58. And they told us we didn't have to be here until 10 after 6, but 5:58. And for me, I love getting up early, but I like to go and have my coffee in my pajamas, in my chair. Monto's at 6:30, not so much.
Okay. So we want to share with you three concepts that we've learned and implemented that have had the greatest impact on our marriage in our 50 years of marriage. And as it was mentioned, we are certified in Prepare Enrich, which is a premarital and an enrichment program. We're not professional counselors, but over the years we've met with a number of couples for premarital and then some to help enrich their marriage. And we've shared these concepts with them, and it's been helpful to them, and we still use it to this day. And it's helped us in balancing our marriage, professional life, and personal life. So what we'd like you to do now is just for a minute or two at your tables, to the level you're comfortable, share with one another either challenges you've faced or are facing, or a friend that you know is facing these challenges. So go ahead at your tables. Okay, if you could finish up that last thought and get your attention, please. All right. Thank you. Anyone care to share some of the challenges that you heard? And you'll have to speak up nice and loud. Anyone? Please.
You got raise my hand, Skip. Okay, so children have moved out, right? Long marriage, children have moved I'm a very nurturing person, but I don't really want to nurture my husband every day of the week. I don't think he wants me to either. So that's a challenge in that phase of marriage.
We don't have an answer for that one.
Still
No, we
working on
do.
it.
Well, I think we can help you, Linda. Someone else.
Can you repeat the comment?
Yes. So the question was, now that their children are out of the house, she's very nurturing, but she doesn't care to nurture her husband every day.
All the time.
Yeah. And I said I don't have an answer for that. Someone else, one more. Okay, well, we're preaching to the choir, right? Not an issue for people. Okay. Well, one of the things I want to mention is that a number of months ago, the Oregonian published an article on dating and marriage, and they got the wisdom of children. So I'd like to share some of that with you. It may be too late for some of you. But what do most people do on a date? Martin, age 10, says on a first date, they just tell each other lies, and that usually gets them interested enough to go for a second date. And when is it okay to kiss someone? Pam, age 7, says when they're rich. And Kurt, age 7, says the law says you have to be 18, so I wouldn't want to mess with that.
So how do you decide who you're going to marry? Kristen, age 10, says no person really decides before they grow up who they're going to marry. God decides that way before, and you get to find out who you're stuck with. What's the right age to get married? Camille, age 10, says 23 is the best age because you know the person forever by then. Well, unfortunately, Skip and I didn't have these tips from children when we were dating. However, as Matisse was saying, we've been married 50 years. We have 3 adult children, 2 sons and a daughter, 6 grandchildren, and 1 great-granddaughter. And I can actually say we have a great marriage. It's not a perfect marriage, but we have a great marriage. But it wasn't always like this. We had been married, Skip was in the Air Force, and we'd been married 15 years when we experienced a crisis in our marriage, which was a real wake-up call for us. And it ended up being a turning point. We had moved multiple times in those 15 years. And the last move was down from Alaska to Portland, where Skip was going to be teaching Air Force ROTC at the University of Portland. We weren't assigned to a base, and that was the first time for us that we had lived in a civilian community. And our kids had always attended schools on the base, and they'd be attending schools in a civilian school. And we purchased our first home. And our whole support system, as we had known it, was taken out from under us. And we were experiencing financial problems with our kids, and Skip, for the first time, was struggling in his career. We were arguing all of the time, and we had really grown apart. We had different values, priorities, personalities, expectations. Our marriage was in crisis, and we were talking divorce. And I was experiencing an emptiness and a loneliness that I was trying to fill with work and activities and things that just weren't satisfying. I felt like something was missing from my life, and I realized what I was searching for was a meaning and purpose, something to fill like a void in my life. And I realized that it was a spiritual side of my life that I'd never experienced before that I was searching for. And so it was during that time that I turned to God, and which resulted in a new focus for me. And that included working on myself and growing instead of being critical and always trying to change Skip. And for the first time, I had a peace and a contentment in my life that I'd never experienced before.
Well, as you can imagine, once she stopped trying to change me and criticizing me, it was quite a relief. And what it felt like to me was she finally got off my back. But it wasn't too much longer that I realized the difference in her, and I wanted the same thing, and I made that same spiritual decision. So we knew we couldn't continue on as we had, and so we talked to a pastor who ended up becoming a good friend and mentor and asked for help. And the first concept that we learned that had the biggest impact is what he called together time.
And what together time is, it's not like a date night, but it was a time that we set aside on a regular basis for just the two of us. It was a time that we talked and we reviewed schedules and we discussed issues. For us, we decided that that would be weekly, so it worked for us on a Monday evening when our daughter was in bed, our sons were in their rooms, and we spent about 1 hour together, and it had a profound effect on our marriage.
And as Barb mentioned, I was struggling in my career and overwhelmed by being a first-time homeowner, and of course we weren't getting along. So this together time allowed us to talk about important issues that really needed to be talked about, but there never seemed to be the right time. I don't know if you've experienced this, but returning home at the end of a busy day.
That wasn't the right time.
How about just before going to sleep at night?
Not the right time.
How about leaving for work in the morning?
That wasn't the right time.
Okay. So because of the together time and being able to talk about things at a set time, I was able to start each day without the tension and the pressure in our marriage and in our family. And quoting from a book recently published called Change Anything, The New Science of Personal Success, they say many of the individuals we studied experienced a challenge in their personal life that by their own calculations also dragged down their work performance by as much as 50%. In their case, fixing one problem meant fixing two. Another group likewise reported that improving their lot at work created benefits that relieved stress and increased confidence at home as well.
So the weekly together time, how that helped me was I knew at that time that I had Skip's undivided attention. No remote on the TV, nothing. I knew that we were on the same page schedule-wise. We each knew when we had challenging days or appointments, and we were more sensitive and supportive to one another. I knew that we would finally be able to talk about some of those things that there was just never the right time to talk about, and it just kept building up. Throughout the week, I would keep a list of the things that I wanted to talk about, and that way I wasn't constantly mulling them over all during the day. And another benefit that we experienced over time was that we learned how to communicate in a healthy way in which affected every area of our life. We were discussing things when we weren't emotionally charged, but really talking about the things we needed to talk about. And looking back, we realized what a wise investment that was in our relationship, just that 1 hour a week. And if you turn to page 3 in your handout, there's an example of the format that we used for that first together time.
And you'll see at the top, the source is We Never Have Time for Just Us by Wayne Rickerson, who was the individual that helped us and mentored us. And in his book, he has 52 of these, one for each week. And there's usually a topic to discuss. This one happened to be on encouragement. So the Let's Talk portion of that format was either a quote or a question, and then we would discuss it. And I know for me, maybe for a lot of guys, it might be sort of stereotyping, but a lot of us need something to help us go a little deeper than, my day was okay. So, so we would read that. We would give us thoughts on that. How could we do better in our family and our relationship based on the topic? And then the issues we need to talk about. And that was plenty of room for me to write mine in there.
But oftentimes, I just turn it over and use the back side.
And then what also helped was the planning part. Each week we would sit down together and we'd look at key events coming up, both for us and for our children, as well as appointments. And that helped us being on the same page and knowing when we had challenging days ahead. And then we usually ended in prayer. So some of you might be thinking, I've got too much on my plate to do something like this. And those that don't understand English might be saying, I don't have the bandwidth for that. And others may be thinking, you know, that's a great idea. I need to spend more time with my spouse. That's a great thing to do. The problem is, if you already have an overbusy life and you add another hour onto it, you're more busy. And what helped us, and life is about priorities and balancing, and what helped us, you need to take the time out of something else, whether it's TV, computer, downloading apps, whatever it might be. What helped us individually and as a couple is the second concept we want to share with you, and it's called Margin by the book of the same title.
Margin is the difference of your limit and your load. And a book written by Robert Swinson, who is a medical doctor, found this to be an issue not only in his patient's life, but in his life as well. And he identified 4 areas requiring margin, and that's our time, emotional, physical, and financial.
And to give you an example in the area of finances, if your income is 100 times X and your expenses are 100 times X, you have 0 margin. And depending on the margin you have, your response to different situations will be very different. For example, if your boss asks you to work overtime and you're at 80%, you have margin. Your response is liable to be, sure, I like my job, I like the people I work with, I'd be happy to. What happens if you're at 100%? You're liable to think, well, okay, just this weekend. That's if you have a choice, but just suppose you get asked, you're at 100%, you say, just this weekend. Now that you're at 120%. Your response is liable to be, are you kidding? I've got too much on my plate already. I quit. I'm out of here. Take a personal issue. Let's say your spouse suggests you invite the new neighbors over for dinner. 80%, you've got capacity. You would say, sure, I've been looking forward to getting to know them. Now that you're 100%, you're liable to say, how about next month? 120%, you're liable to respond, let's close the blinds and dim the lights. So depending on your margin, it makes a difference on how you respond. And if you would go to page 4, there's a little bit more on margin at the top, and then at the bottom there's a continuum where you could estimate where you are in terms of margin in these 4 areas. And if you're in a relationship, you might have that other person do likewise and see if you're on the same page. So Barb and I had made time for one another and together time. We adjusted our priorities because we became aware of our margins or lack of margin. And we were doing great. Not perfect, but we were doing great. But we found that when we went out to dinner or decided to do something for fun, one of us would bring up a topic that was kind of a hot issue, and it would ruin the experience. I don't know if you've ever experienced that. So what helped us is the third concept we learned, and this was from Dr. John Gottman, who's a leading research scientist on marriage and family at the University of Washington. He found for couples to have a long-term, happy and stable marriage, they need a minimum of 5-to-1 positive interactions. Your marriage needs much more positivity than negativity to nourish your love. With at least 5-to-1 positive interactions, you will develop a friendship and intimacy. Without it, your relationship is in danger of withering and dying.
So you might be thinking, how is this third concept, the 5-to-1 positive interactions, used? There are some things that you can do on a daily basis that will provide positive interactions, and we'll get to those in a minute. But maybe, like us, as Skip has shared, maybe you have plans to go out to dinner or a movie, and you want it to be a special evening, and then one of you brings up a topic that just ruins the evening. Well, that used to be our experience. When we learned about the 5-to-1 positive experiences and we understood that it's important to separate the positive experiences from the negative, we decided, so what we decided to do was, in advance, we would agree that this was going to be a positive experience. Then, if one of us brings up a hot topic, the other one would say,
we've already agreed this is going to be a positive experience. And by the way, this morning, I said to Barb, this is going to be a positive experience.
So the reason this works for us is because we have a together time, so we know that we're keeping current on those other things that need to be talked about. So you're not just laying them aside and letting them build. And if you turn to page 5, you'll see some days that you can have positive interactions, just to kind of generate some ideas.
So page 5 and 6, and again, I need help in most of these areas, so this was helpful to me. You'll see the major topics are show interest in one another, be affectionate, show you care, be appreciative, show your concern, be empathetic, be accepting, joke around, and share your joy. And so we actually, one time when we got away for a weekend, we decided we need to have more fun in our life, to take things a little lighter. And so we decided to focus on laughing. So we would clip out cartoons, and I still do that to this day, post them on the refrigerator, and just try to enjoy each day, because each day is a gift. And I've shared that concept, that 5-to-1 positive. As a matter of fact, I won't say who, but a couple may be here today that I mentioned that 5-to-1. I said, if you want to know more about that, you might want to come today. So thanks for being here, and you know who you are. and he came because he's got our business to prune our trees. So, but thank you. Okay, it's the guy with the pruner back there. Okay. So the 3 concepts we implemented, the together time, margin, and 5-to-1 positive interactions. And that's a minimum 5-to-1. With our like faith, we were on the same page with our priorities and values, and we're committed to working on our marriage. The first concept we implemented was the most helpful, and that was together time. And as we already said, we set aside time on a regular basis. And over time that changed. We went from Monday night to, I ended up teaching a night course, ROTC at the University of Portland. I took on a night session that we ran, and so I had Wednesday morning off. And so for a couple years, every morning we drop our daughter off at preschool, and then, first grade or whatever grade she was in, we'd stop at a restaurant and spend a couple hours. And it was great. We didn't realize that was our together time. So we stopped the Monday night. Sometimes I'd fall asleep when we were praying. But so that changes over time, but we use it to this day, the together time. And then being able to talk about issues when you're not emotionally charged, that had a huge impact. Matter of fact, it was so effective, we went back to this pastor and said, that's so helpful, what do we do with our family? And he told us about family nights, which is not part of this session, but we implemented family nights that had a huge impact on our family as well. So again, the together time eliminated the stress of coming home from a busy day and being hit with more stress when you walk in the door. And that could be for either one of you. It also helped me sleep better at night, and I'm sure it helped Barb as well. Although she was usually looking to talk that evening because I finally slowed down. So that was my problem. But that eliminated that. And then being able to leave in the morning without an issue that came up that I'm going to think about all day had a huge impact on my, I believe, my work and being present at work.
And margin was the second concept that we implemented, making sure that our load did not exceed our limit in the areas of time, emotional, physical, and financial. For us, margin was a warning that we could not continue living with overloaded lives, and because we wanted to have health and balance in our relationship and life. Having margin helped us to be able to sort out what was important and not get stuck in the trivial matters.
And then again, the third concept was maintaining a minimum of 5-to-1 positive interactions. And by the way, they've done studies in the workplace, and to have a healthy team, you need a minimum of 3-to-1 positive interactions. So some of you who manage teams or maybe on teams, you might consider how often is your interaction positive and how often is it negative. But remember, with a 5-to-1, you need to be intentional on a daily basis. So it does take effort, but it makes a huge difference, and it's worth that. And doing these things enabled us to have a healthy balance between our marriage and our personal and professional life. And regardless of the season you're currently in, we believe that implementing some of these will be of help to you. And as Barb said, and I certainly agree, we have a great marriage, not a perfect marriage. And as our daughter has reminded us, it's direction, not perfection. So as long as you're going in the right way and growing together, working through issues, you're going in the right direction. So with that, we're open to take any questions.
Past.
Oh, that's right.
Yeah.
So the question is, harsh startups, what's that about? This is from John Gottman. He found out that 96% of the time, how a conversation starts up determines its ending. If you start up harshly, you've only got a 4% correction factor to make it end up on a good note. If you start up softly, you have a 96% chance of having it turn out well. The first time, and Barb and I went to Gottman's seminar, we've read his books, and I remember the first time Barb wanted to talk to me about an issue that had been an unresolved issue, that typically it was a harsh startup. She came to me and said, it's kind of one of those things, you know where you were at that time. I was standing in the kitchen right at the end of the counter. And she said,
real trauma.
And she said, honey, I want to talk about this subject, and I want to do it softly. So I knew two things. It was going to be difficult, but she wanted to do it better, and it was. And so think about that. And by the way, if I were to give you time to say which gender tends to have harsh startups, I think most guys would say it's women, and that's true. By the way, that's what he found in his 35 years of research. And the reason for it, and when I share this with groups, the guys usually kind of get smug and smile. But the reason the women have harsh startup is because the guys are kind of oblivious to what's going on and they don't get it. So by the way, so it says harsh startup, but if somebody comes harshly to you, whether you're in customer service, whether you're working with a teammate, if they're harsh, if you respond softly, you can turn that around. There's actually a proverb that says a soft answer turns away wrath and a harsh word stirs up anger. Mm-hmm. So Gottman teaches that all the time. Another question. The question is, how do you get more margin in these different areas? Well, for me personally, when I'm driving, if I'm in a hurry, I know some of you may understand that, it's probably because I don't have a whole lot of time. I'm rushing from thing to thing, and that's the time for me to say, you know what, I need to take a look at what I'm doing. Do I have too much on my plate? Mm-hmm. The other thing, if I get short with Barb, mm-hmm. she calls me Kurt if I get short, so soft. But if I do that, it's because I got too much going on, and that's personal. And that's a difficult decision, especially when you got a job that you love, for example, and you got unending work. It's pretty easy to get wrapped up in it at the expense of a relationship.
And I think that what we did was at our together time, when we first heard about margin, we read the book, we looked down through the chart that they had, and each of us individually sat down and kind of graphed out where we were. And so we began talking about it, and then our values were changing over time, and so we just realized where we wanted to spend our time and where we had to cut if we were going to do that.
And by the way, in the book, since he's a doctor, he has a prescription for each one of these. He has several great ideas. Yeah. So it's called Margin by Robert Swenson. Mm-hmm. Yes?
You talked about being intentional about the 5 to 1, so 4 out of every 5 experiences are positive. Mm-hmm. Did you also find time to be intentional about not necessarily a negative experience, but when you do and felt like you needed to talk about something that was a hot topic like you talked about?
Okay, so the question is, we talked about 5 to 1, trying to make it the positive, but did you ever, so when there was a hot topic, what did we do?
Yeah, were you intentional about that? Making time for talking about hot topics?
Okay, so were we intentional about making time for it? And we were. Mm-hmm. I mentioned our together time has changed. We don't have any children at home now, Linda, and so she doesn't have to nurture me every day, but we walk several days a week together. And part of that is always looking at our schedule. It's talking about things, and sometimes, and by the way, usually when we start our walk, I say, can we make this a positive experience? Yeah. And if I don't, she has license to bring something up, but I'll usually say, you know what, can we wait until we get home, or could we do it after dinner tonight? So I don't postpone it anymore. And by the way, when we talk to couples that are kind of struggling, that they don't talk about issues, now again, I'm being stereotypical, is that the right expression? Typically, it's the woman that has it. She's been thinking about it. Now, it could be the reverse, but most women think about things, and then they bring it up. And the guy doesn't have a clue, at least I didn't have a clue that that was an issue. And so what we've learned to do is if she would bring something up, I'd say, well, you know what, I'm not prepared to talk about it now. But in the past, I never found the time. I need to tell her when I'm prepared to. And we usually do it within 2 hours. So does that make sense?
Depending upon how urgent.
Well, yeah, if there's a fire in the kitchen, that's not a,
And I think our list was really long when we first started, but as we began seeing some improvement, we could check these things off that we really were talking about them. And I think the value of talking about them, like at a together time, you weren't emotionally charged, but you knew you were going to be talking about it. So you come at it looking totally different. I mean, it was just such an eye-opener for us.
okay.
How do you keep track of the 5-to-1 positive? Do you actually jot it down? This is 5 and this is 1?
Well, see, that's kind of, before I understood about, particularly when you go out to say in advance, I used to think, well, we've had, 25 minutes or 20 minutes of good time, let's argue for 5 minutes. I mean, I didn't know what to do with that. But when we heard, and this was from Gary Smalley, so what he and his wife would do when they would go out, he usually was the one that brought up the issues. It was kind of the opposite. But they decided they'd say in advance, can we make this positive? And we've done it. We've gone to Europe twice for 3 weeks. I mean, anytime we do almost anything, if the intent is to enjoy our time, we say, can we make this positive? And I think once in 6 weeks total in Europe, something came up, and one of us said, we were going to make this positive, and we didn't talk about it.
Yeah. And I think the reason that really worked for me, because I knew we were going to talk about it, and I knew I could put it down, and I could count on him being in agreement to talk about it. Where in the past, you can say, well, let's just make this a positive experience, and then you never really get to the issues. But and I think Gottman said that that alone develops the friendship of your relationship.
Right.
That if you have more positive, and as you get older, that's so important. Just the friendship, enjoying being with one another.
The other thing that Gottman found that we realized is there's the 4 horsemen of the apocalypse. That's the downward spiral in communication, and he's identified that. And the first one is criticism. And complaining is okay. Complaining is specific, like you said you'd take the trash out and you didn't. Criticism sounds like you never do anything around here. It's like, what do you do with that? So if you quit the criticism, that'll help the communication. And then the second one is defensiveness. So it says you didn't take the trash out and say, well, I had a lot on my mind. Well, that's an excuse. So you drop that, just acknowledge. And then the third one is contempt. And both Gottman and Dr. Phil have said within the first couple minutes of an argument, they can both predict with about 90% accuracy who will divorce. And contempt is an attack on the character, like you're lazy like your dad, or you know what I'm saying? So you eliminate the contempt. You don't be defensive, accept what they say without defending yourself, and you can complain, but not too much. And then the last one is stonewalling, where you just kind of shut down and you're not there.
Yeah.
Okay.
Time's up.
So
Thank you.